Hi and welcome. And welcome to Jenni. Jenni, do you want to just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do? And
yeah, sure. I'm a long-term youth worker and supporter of those who support young people. I've worked with young people for most of my adult life. More recently, though, I've been working with the youth workers themselves, either through training. I was the head of the FE department at the Institute for Children, Youth and Mission for a little while. And then even more sort of recently become a mentor for youth workers in any context, whether that's a faith-based thing or outside in the non-faith world, as it were. So yes, and I'm also an author. I've just written the book From Isolation to Community, talking about youth work in the COVID era and beyond. So yeah, it's been a bit of a blast these last few weeks, really.
sounds like a bit of a roller coaster, really. How have you found, with you writing a book about youth work in a pandemic? What sort of things have you found with youth work and this current season?
I think I found that
still by the book. Still by the book.
Indeed, I think I found that youth workers have been working hard. That they have been often changing quite dramatically what it is they do and how they do it. I had a conversation even just recently with somebody who said they're much more of a video editor and a content creator now than they were, than they are a youth worker, hands-on, as it were. So I think a lot of youth workers have had to really change the way that they work. But I've been really excited and chuffed to see the different things that youth workers have been doing in terms of, providing food for people on their patch, in terms of providing kind of stability and community for the people that they come into contact with regularly. So that's been really encouraging, I guess, to see happen. Yeah.
And it's been an interesting thing for churches, youth work, any of those sort of spheres that are based around relationship, really. Suddenly having to work out how to do relationship where we normally do it face to face, to work out how to do it sort of virtually. How have people found that? Has that been a...
Well, I think it's fair to say it's been a really mixed bag. There are a lot of youth groups that have just really struggled at different points with video calling and using video calling technology. I think during the first lockdown, when it seemed to go on and on and on, didn't it? And the restrictions were so tight, and we couldn't see anybody at all for any reason. I think that the novelty then of being able to see your friends on a screen was really sort of a really key thing. That has seemed to have tailed off as the young people themselves have been back into schools and all of that sort of stuff. And as we get a bit further on in this sort of the COVID wave, if you like, there's been more and more fatigue really around using video calling platforms, particularly perhaps Zoom. We call it Zoom fatigue now, don't we?
Yeah.
But I think, there's some people have done it really successfully. I've talked to one woman from the West Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service Youth Interventions team. It's a bit of a mouthful, but they're doing some amazing work with their Prince's Trust courses, which they've put online, and had some real success with young people really bonding and feeling like they were kind of friends, even though they'd not ever actually met in real life. And giving them a sense of, I guess, agency and ownership. The amazing thing about that was the Prince's Trust courses, they run for quite a long time, and young people have to it's quite a big time commitment. And even over Zoom, they were doing 3 calls a day during the week for 8 weeks over the summer, which I think is astonishing. But actually, that's the way to build community over a video calling platform. It is that kind of like quite a big time commitment, but a constant, like at each day or at the same time each week perhaps. You need to be able to kind of really get a regular contact with those young people.
Yeah, I think it's like, Zoom like normal relationships, it takes time for relationships to build, and I think actually it takes longer for time to build. Well, in one sense I think it takes longer for relationships to build on Zoom, in a sense, because actually you're not physically seeing the people, but in one sense there's that sort of weirdness of the fact that actually people are actually talking rather than just, because often you hang out without actual real communication. Sometimes you can just be next to somebody without actually talking, or hanging out with somebody without actually engaging. And so an interesting season.
Yes, absolutely.
But I guess people also had that thing of, just because we can't meet physically, I guess sometimes the relationships have dropped off a bit by groups just not happening, or them not actually doing stuff. So I guess you probably had things been a bit of a case of the best of times, the worst of times, where some people have really made it work, and other people really haven't. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing really is that where the video calling has kind of maybe taken a bit of a dive, what I've seen is that youth workers have then tried other things. So there was one organisation who decided that they would do the risk assessment, and they would join their young people on a gaming platform of their choice. So where young people might call them or text them and say, I'm not doing okay at the moment, can we chat? I'm just playing on my computer. Well, I'll join you on the game that you're playing, and provided obviously that it's appropriate, and all the age sort of limits are kept to, and all of that sort of stuff, which obviously does, I think, put a bit of panic into people. But this guy Winston, he said to me, he's a leader of a youth work organisation in London, and he said, we looked at it as it's as if the young people are playing pool, and we would chat with the young people while we're playing pool, and if the young person brings something up over that game where you think that might need a little bit of extra kind of input or a bit more of a deeper conversation, then you wouldn't do that around the pool table. You'd do that in a different context. So he said online gaming platforms are no different. They're chatting, just keeping in contact, and if the young person brings something up, then the staff member is able to say to them, well, let's set up a mentoring kind of conversation in order to kind of talk a bit further about that issue, just to keep it, keep the kind of conversation at a contact level. And I thought that was really good. I thought it was a really kind of, it's a very different thing. Most youth workers, and particularly I think Christian youth workers, have kind of shied away a little bit from that sort of contact over gaming platforms, but it can be done, and the risk assessment is the thing that's important there, and making sure people know what they're doing.
I think for youth work and for just general work with churches and anything doing with relationship, is actually, in changing times, you need to have to be more creative about how we engage relationally, and actually that might mean thinking in ways we haven't thought before. And I think, interestingly, I wonder if the COVID pandemic has made us be more imaginative, or if we haven't been more imaginative, we're going to suffer for a lack of imagination post COVID. How do you think people are going to relate once COVID's dissipated and we have to go back, and I guess that's going to, how we return is going to be different. Have you got any thoughts on that?
It's very much the $64 million question, really. What is life going to look like post-pandemic? And I think we're not there yet, are we? So
No.
We're still in this phase of restrictions starting to lift. We're still, in terms of youth work, we're kind of looking towards, in perhaps April kind of time, being able to meet a bit more, maybe the one-to-ones, or sitting perhaps in a coffee shop with one or two maybe other young people might be possible in April. And then it's not until kind of later on in May really where things, I think, will return to something a bit more like it was, and even then there will be restrictions in place. And I one of the things, or a couple of things I talk about really in the book that I think will be particularly important, this online stuff has been, as you've already said, the best of times and the worst of times. And I think we need to not throw the baby out with the bathwater. We need to make sure that we're taking what's good and what's creative and what has really connected well with young people in an online way, whether that's your Instagram lives, or whether that's your a particular competition you might be running that works well online. You might use Facebook you know, whatever it is that you're using that works well, don't stop using it because, you know, it's important. And I think it reaches young people who may feel more awkward about arriving in a group together.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's going to be really important as we go kind of through into the summer of this year, I think, is working out how we can connect with young people outdoors. Outdoors is the safest space really to connect with people. There's minimal risk in terms of infection, and obviously, you know, there are loads of things that we can do outdoors. And I think, you know, if your young people are anything like my children, you know, my kids have really kind of just, they are not interested in physical exercise, not interested in going outside. I have to actually push them out the door. It's not quite true all the time, but it's been true at various times. And I'm really concerned that they are losing their, what I call residual fitness. So, you know, kids going to school, they cycle a couple of miles there, they walk around school, they do their PE lessons, they, you know, run around in the playground at break time, and then they cycle home again. And that, they have done none of that at all for the last 4 months. And I just think, and they did none of that at all during the kind of the first lockdown either. And I'm really concerned about their level of fitness. So I think anything that encourages young people to get outside and to do things that are kind of physically moving their bodies is really good for their physical health. It's obviously also really good for their mental health. It's great for building relationships. It's great for talking about risk, you know, in a very practical kind of way. So I think that the blend of outdoors and then in person, you know, that same physical space at the same time, and an online offering where that has really worked is going to be, those are the two things I think are going to be really key in the coming weeks and months. And I think it'll be a while before we can really go back to what we would call normal.
In fact, I don't know whether normal will ever be quite the same as it was, but I think interestingly, the Anglicans have a phrase called mixed economy, which are talking about different styles of church. But actually, mixed economy, I think, is going to be a word we use more often, or a phrase we use more often. Because actually, we're going to be, it's rather an either or. We're going to be a both and with a lot of things that have worked of pre-COVID, post-COVID. Brilliant. And like just final thought, Jenny, if you could have a what's the question really? If you could talk to yourself pre-COVID, if you could talk to your pre-COVID self, what would you say?
Oh wow. I think I'd say get ready. Buckle up. I think it's just been a wild ride, hasn't it? It's just been crazy. Some of the things that we've done in the last year in the youth work world and in other fields of as well, in church as well, I think in particular. You know, some things have had to change so rapidly, and they changed absolutely so rapidly. And we might have had on our kind of 5-year plan something to do with, well, we might look at doing something online, you know, with the young people in a few years' time that might extend the reach of our youth work programs that we're on in church in particular. But we would never have dreamt, I don't think, of any of that kind of suddenly coming into play really as fast as it did. So and I think, you know, the timeless things that we offer our young people, we offer them hope, we offer them community, we offer them sanctuary, and those are really key things, and they're still really key things, and are going to be as we go into the future too. So I think those would be the kind of those 3 things that I really think are important.
You said again, hope, sanctuary, and
hope, community, and sanctuary.
Hope, community, and sanctuary. Fantastic.
Yeah,
that's really, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Jenny. That's been brilliant.
No,
thank you.
It's great. Cheers. It's great to talk to you, Andy. Thanks.